The emissary's ship was beautiful in a way that made humans uncomfortable. It looked less like a vessel and more like a living crystal, all smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to shift colors when no one was looking directly at them. It had appeared in orbit around Earth 3 days ago without warning, without sound, simply materializing as if it had always been there, and everyone had just forgotten to notice. Ambassador stood in the United Earth Federation's council chamber, watching the being that called itself. The emissary was tall, taller than any human, with skin that looked like flowing mercury and eyes that held the depth of galaxies. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once, resonating in the bones of everyone present. "You are the humans," said, though its mouth didn't move in quite the right way. "You have achieved interstellar capability. This brings you into the domain of the collective. You will now take your place in the proper order of things." Had been a diplomat for 30 years. She had negotiated trade deals, prevented wars, and talked down terrorists. She knew how to read a room, how to sense when someone was offering a choice versus delivering an ultimatum. This was an ultimatum. "And what is this proper order?" she asked carefully. His eyes brightened, perhaps pleased by the question. "The collective has maintained peace across this galaxy for 1 million of your years. We are the stewards of civilization, the guardians of order. Under our guidance, species flourish. Wars end. Suffering diminishes. You will submit your military forces to our authority. You will accept our oversight of your expansion. You will contribute your resources to the greater good. In return, you will know security." "And if we refuse," kept her voice level. The being tilted its head in a way that suggested confusion more than threat. Refusal is not a concept that applies. Every species that has reached the stars has joined the collective. Those who initially resisted came to understand the wisdom of order, usually within one of your solar cycles. The alternative to order is chaos, and chaos leads only to extinction. Looked around the chamber at the other representatives. President Martinez of the American Union, Premier of the Eurasian Federation, Chancellor of the African Alliance, Director of the Pacific Coalition. She saw the same thing in all their eyes. Humanity had spent the last 3 centuries finally getting past its tendency to fight itself. They had colonies on 40 worlds. They had built something worth protecting. But they had also learned something important in all those centuries of clawing their way to the stars. They had learned what happened when you bowed to tyrants. "Turn back to. We need time to discuss this among ourselves." "You have 3 of your days," said. "When I return, you will deliver your species' acceptance." The emissary left as it had arrived, simply ceasing to be there. The council chamber erupted in argument immediately. Some wanted to negotiate to buy time. Others wanted to prepare for war. A few, the pragmatic ones, suggested that perhaps the collective was telling the truth. Perhaps 1 million years of peace was worth the cost of submission. Let them argue for an hour before she called for silence. "Let me tell you what I saw in that being's eyes," she said. "Certainty. Complete, absolute certainty that we would do exactly as it expects. Do you know when I've seen that look before? In every bully, every dictator, every tyrant who ever thought their power made them right. The collective isn't offering us peace. They're offering us chains." "But what can we do?" Director asked. "If they've ruled for 1 million years, they have technology we can't match, military power we can't resist." "Maybe," acknowledged, "but I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees, and I think I'm not alone in that." She wasn't. When the vote came, it was unanimous. 3 days later, when returned for humanity's answer, delivered it in the simplest terms possible. "No." The emissary stood silent for a long moment. "Explain this response." "We don't need it explained. You understand the word. The answer is no. We will not submit. We will not surrender our sovereignty. We will not trade our freedom for your version of peace. You are choosing extinction. We're choosing to stand up. If that means we fall, then we fall. But we'll fall fighting, not kneeling." His eyes darkened. the galaxies within them seeming to collapse into black holes. You are children playing with forces you cannot comprehend. You will be taught why order exists. The being vanished. Within hours, the collective's fleet arrived. Captain Maria Santos watched her tactical display with growing concern. 12 ships, each one bigger than anything humanity had ever built, had taken up positions around Earth's outer colonies. They weren't attacking yet. They were just sitting there, a silent threat. "They're showing us what they can do," her first officer commander said quietly, letting us think about it. "Then we should give them something to think about too," Maria said. Her ship, the destroyer Defiant, was old by human standards. 20 years of service, patched hull, weapons that were 2 generations behind the latest models. But it was fast, and its crew knew how to fly it with their eyes closed. "Helm, take us into that asteroid field near the third colony. Tactical. I want every mine we have deployed in a pattern that looks random but funnels anything following us into a kill zone. Engineering. Prepare to route all power to forward shields on my mark." "Captain, what are we doing?" asked. "We're going to teach these ancient overlords that humans don't sit still and wait to be conquered." The Defiant broke from its position and accelerated hard toward the asteroid field. As Maria had expected, one of the collective's ships pursued. It was massive, elegant, and almost lazy in its pursuit. It didn't think the Defiant was a threat. It thought this was just another frightened ship fleeing to hide. Maria let it think that right up until she gave the order. "All power to forward shields. Helm, come about full thrust. We're going to ram them." The bridge crew didn't hesitate. They had all volunteered for this mission knowing it was probably suicide. If they were going to die anyway, they might as well make it count. The Defiant spun on its axis and accelerated back the way it had come, directly at the collective ship. The alien vessel began evasive maneuvers, but it was designed for elegant, calculated combat at long range. It wasn't built to deal with something as insane as a direct collision. At the last moment, the Defiant fired every weapon it had at point-blank range. Missiles, rounds, energy beams, everything. The collective ship's shields flared, held, but the sudden overload disrupted them just enough. The Defiant hit like a hammer, shields at maximum, tearing through the alien hull. The destroyer didn't survive intact. It spun away, venting atmosphere with half its systems dead. But the collective ship was worse. It hung in space, trailing debris, its perfect surface and broken. "Status," Maria shouted through the alarms blaring across the bridge. "Life support stable, engines at 30%, weapons offline," reported, blood running down his face from a cut on his forehead. "But Captain, we're alive, and they're retreating." Maria watched on the screens as the damaged collective ship. The other 11 ships pulled back as well, maintaining their blockade but now at a much more respectful distance. "Broadcast what just happened," Maria ordered. "Every colony, every ship, every human in the galaxy needs to see this. The collective can bleed." The video spread faster than any military communication ever had. Within hours, every human colony had seen the Defiant's desperate attack, but more importantly, so had every other species in the galaxy. Species that had served the collective for thousands of years suddenly saw something they had never imagined. The ancient overlords could be hurt. On the collective's primary command ship convened the War Council. The other overlords appeared as projections, their forms flickering with barely contained anger. "These humans attacked one of our vessels," Overlord Praxis stated, its voice like grinding stone. "They must be made an example." "They are desperate," said. "They do not understand what they face." "Then make them understand," Overlord Senna demanded. "Every moment we show restraint, they grow bolder. Already we are detecting increased communication among the lesser species. Some are questioning the order." Felt something it had not experienced in 10,000 years: uncertainty. The humans fought in ways that made no tactical sense. They sacrificed their own vessels, their own lives, not in coordinated military strategy, but in acts of individual defiance. They treated each battle as if it was personal rather than simply a calculation of force. It was inefficient, it was illogical, it was working. Deploy the extinction fleet, ordered, not just to the human territories. Send detachments to every sector showing signs of unrest. We will remind the galaxy why order must be maintained. The other overlords nodded their approval and vanished from the projections. Remained, staring at the tactical display showing human space. Such a small region, so few worlds, so little power. And yet they had done something that should have been impossible. They had made the collective hesitate. On Earth, addressed the United Earth Federation. Behind her, the video of the Defiance attack played on repeat. A single old destroyer against a ship that should have obliterated it in seconds, and the destroyer had won. "I won't lie to you," she said. "We're going to lose people. We're going to lose colonies. The collective has more ships, better technology, and 1,000,000 years of experience crushing anyone who them. Every rational analysis says we cannot win this fight." She paused, letting her words sink in. But here's what those analyses don't account for. We're human. We've been defying rational analyses since we first looked up at the stars and decided we belonged there. We've survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and our own worst impulses. We've clawed our way up from caves to colonies, and we did it by refusing to accept that anything was impossible. The collective thinks this is about military power. They think if they hit us hard enough, we'll realize we can't win and we'll submit. They don't understand that we're not fighting to win. We're fighting because the alternative is living on our knees, and humans don't do that. We never have. She looked directly into the camera, knowing the collective would see this message. "So come at us with your extinction fleet. Bring your 1,000,000 years of power. We'll meet you with 300 years of stubborn human defiance and show you something your empire has forgotten. Freedom is worth any price." Across human space, the message was received. Colonies prepared for siege. Ships that had been designed for exploration were hastily retrofitted with weapons. Civilians volunteered for military service in numbers that overwhelmed recruitment centers. And in the deep dark between the stars, the extinction fleet began its journey toward Earth. 200 ships, each one a weapon that had ended entire civilizations. They had never failed in their purpose, not once in 1,000,000 years. They were about to discover that humans had a saying about first times. The war had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months had changed everything and nothing. Earth still stood, though 50 of its colonies had fallen to the collective's methodical advance. The extinction fleet moved through human space like a slow tide, taking one system after another with mechanical efficiency. Every conventional military analysis said humanity should have surrendered by the 3rd month. But humanity had never been good at doing what it should do. Admiral Maria Santos, promoted after the Defiant's famous ramming attack, stood on the bridge of her new flagship, the carrier Indomitable. She watched the tactical display with tired eyes. Her fleet was running on fumes, spare parts, and sheer stubbornness. They had just finished evacuating the colony before the extinction fleet arrived. 2,000,000 civilians saved. Her fleet reduced by 3 ships in the process. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission," Commander said. He had stayed with her through the promotion, and the scar on his forehead had become something of a badge of honor among the crew. "It's not human." Maria straightened, "Put it through." The face that appeared on the screen was, with compound eyes that reflected light in rainbow patterns. One of the species that served the collective as warriors. They had a reputation for being brutal in combat and absolutely loyal to the overlords. "Human Admiral," the clicked, its translator rendering the sounds into words. "I am commander of the 3rd warrior caste. I watched your vessel ram the collective ship 6 months ago. I watched you sacrifice your fleet to save civilians today. I wish to speak with you about something the collective does not permit: memory. Maria glanced at, who looked as confused as she felt. I'm listening. My people were warriors long before the collective came to our world. We had honor, we had pride. We fought for our nests, for our young, for our right to exist as we chose. The collective took that from us. They said our warrior nature was dangerous, that it must be controlled and channeled only in their service. For 3,000 years we have been their weapons. For 3,000 years we have forgotten what it meant to fight for ourselves. The mandibles clicked in what might have been emotion. Then we watched humans say no. We watched you fight ships you could not defeat. We watched you die rather than kneel. And some of us began to remember what we once were. What are you saying? Maria asked carefully. I am saying that I have 3 under my command. Ships the collective believes are hunting human stragglers in the outer systems. But I have convinced my warriors that perhaps it is time to remember our own history. Perhaps it is time to see if the collective bleeds as easily as your videos suggest. Maria's heart raced, but she kept her voice steady. If you're discovered, they'll destroy you. Yes, agreed. Just as they will destroy you. The difference is that you chose your death with open eyes. We would like to make the same choice. We would like to die as warriors again, not as tools. Then welcome to the rebellion, Commander. We're going to need all the help we can get. This transmission ended, but within an hour, 3 more came. A scientist offering to help jam collective communications. An engineer willing to sabotage supply lines. A merchant captain with information about fleet movements. What the collective had not anticipated was that humanity's defiance was contagious. On Earth, Dr. James worked in a laboratory buried 2 miles beneath the surface. Around him, hundreds of scientists from a dozen institutions worked on the problem that would determine whether humanity survived the next month. How do you fight an enemy with a million years head start on technology? The key is that they're predictable, James explained to his team during their daily briefing. Every battle the collective fights follows the same pattern. They analyze the situation, calculate the optimal response, and execute it with perfect precision. It's beautiful, really, and it's their greatest weakness. He brought up a holographic display showing the collective's battle tactics from the last 6 months. See how every engagement follows the same mathematical principles. They're not adapting to us. They're just applying the same strategies they've used for a million years, because those strategies always worked before. So how do we exploit that? Dr. Wei asked. She was a specialist in chaos theory, recruited specifically because James thought the solution to perfect order was perfect chaos. We introduce randomness into their calculations. We build weapons that don't make tactical sense. We fight in ways that can't be predicted because they're not trying to be optimal, they're trying to be confusing. Over the next 2 months, James's team developed what they called disruption drones. Small, cheap devices that did nothing but introduce false data into sensor networks, create phantom targets, and generally make organized battle impossible. They weren't powerful. They wouldn't destroy collective ships, but they would make the ancient overlords fight blind. The first test came at the Battle of New Sarajevo. The collective arrived with overwhelming force, expecting to crush the defending human fleet in hours. Instead, they found chaos. Disruption drones made their sensors useless. Human ships darted in and out of engagement range, never staying still long enough to target. Civilian vessels broadcasted music on every frequency, ancient human war songs that jammed collective communications with drums and electric guitars and defiant lyrics. The collective won the battle. They took the colony, but it cost them 12 ships in 3 weeks. Normally, it would have taken them 3 days and no losses. Word spread, not just to humans but to every species watching the war with growing interest. Stood before the Overlord Council, its form flickering with barely contained frustration. The humans are spreading disorder throughout our empire. 47 worlds have reported incidents of rebellion in the past month. The third caste has openly defected. Supply lines are being sabotaged. Our own servants are questioning our authority. Then crush them, Overlord Praxis stated. Crush them all. Make examples that will be remembered for another 1,000,000 years. We have been making examples, replied. We have sterilized 12 rebel worlds. We have executed 10,000 conspirators, and still the disorder spreads. These humans have introduced a weapon we cannot counter, hope. Hope is not a weapon, Overlord Senna said dismissively. Tell that to the species who have served us for, and are now suddenly remembering that service is not the same as choice. The council fell silent. Finally, the eldest Overlord hand spoke. Its voice was ancient, tired, and absolutely cold. Deploy the world enders. Every world that shows signs of rebellion will be reduced to lifeless rock. Every species that questions the order will see what happens to those who spread chaos. And the human, this earth, will be destroyed completely. Not conquered, not occupied, erased from existence. That will kill billions, said quietly. Order must be maintained, Han replied. At any cost. You yourself said it, they have spread hope. We must now spread terror in equal measure. The Great Purge begins immediately. Bowden, as it returned to its command ship, it thought about the human ambassador's words 6 months ago, about how tyranny always demanded blood to sustain itself. For 1,000,000 years, the collective had believed they were beyond such crude methods. They had thought their power made them benevolent rulers. But when that power was challenged, they revealed what they truly were, tyrants who ruled through fear, no different than the cruel overlords they had overthrown eons ago. The realization brought no comfort. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Maria received the intelligence report and felt her stomach turn to ice. The world enders were real. The collective had weapons that could crack planets like eggs, and they were bringing them to Sol's system. Earth had 2 weeks before extinction arrived. She called an emergency conference with every Allied captain, every rebel leader, every human commander who could reach a communication channel. Hundreds of faces appeared on screens around her, human and alien alike, united by desperation. We're out of time, Maria said simply. The collective is bringing planet-killing weapons to Earth. We can't stop them. We don't have the firepower. If we try to defend, we all die and we accomplish nothing. So we surrender, a human captain asked bitterly. No, we attack. Silence filled the channel. Finally, mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. You wish to attack their throne world, Prime, the planet that has never fallen in 1,000,000 years. Yes, while their forces are committed to the purge, while they're busy burning rebel worlds, we hit them where they think they're safe. We can't win militarily, but Doctor has developed something that might end this war anyway. James appeared on screen, looking exhausted and slightly manic. I've created an information virus. Not biological, not digital in the way we think of it. It's a pattern that breaks down the psychic control network the collective uses to maintain their empire. If we can introduce it into their central systems on Prime, every species they've subjugated will suddenly have access to knowledge the overlords have been hoarding for 1,000,000 years. Their monopoly on power ends instantly. How do we get to their throne world? A captain asked. It is protected by defenses built by 100 extinct civilizations. We fly straight at them, Maria said. Every ship we have, every rebel who will join us. We don't try to be clever. We don't try to be sneaky. We just hit them with everything and keep hitting them until either they break or we do. Because if we fail, Earth dies anyway. At least this way, we go down fighting for something bigger than ourselves. She looked at all the faces on the screens, human and alien, young and old, all of them marked by months of impossible war. I won't order anyone to join me. This is suicide, but I'm going anyway. The first voice to answer was, the third caste will fight beside you. It will be an honor to die as warriors again. Then human captains, one after another, volunteering for a mission that military doctrine said was impossible. Within hours, the fleet began to gather. 300 ships, mostly human but with alien vessels scattered throughout. Against the defenses of Prime, it was laughably inadequate. But it was what they had, and it was more than the collective expected. Because the one thing a million years of unchallenged power had taught the Overlords was that no one would ever be crazy enough to attack them directly. They were about to learn that humans were experts at doing the crazy thing. The fleet assembled in the shadow of a dying star, far from any collective patrols. 300 ships against a million years of empire. Admiral Maria Santos walked through the corridors of the Indomitable, looking at the faces of her crew. They were exhausted, running on stimulants and determination. Most of them wouldn't see Earth again. Most of them knew it. She stopped at the hangar bay where Dr. James was making final adjustments to the virus carrier, a small device that looked far too simple to end an empire. He looked up as she approached, his eyes bloodshot from days without sleep. "Will it work?" she asked quietly. James was silent for a moment. "Honestly, I don't know. The collective systems are so far beyond our understanding that I'm basically guessing at half of this. But it's a good guess, and it's all we have." "That's been humanity's motto for this entire war," Maria said with a tired smile. "It's all we have, but it'll do." The journey to Prime took 4 days at maximum speed. 4 days of waiting, of running simulations that all ended badly, of writing letters to loved ones that would only be sent if they didn't come back. The mixed fleet of humans and aliens created an odd camaraderie. Warriors taught humans their battle chants. Telepaths showed people how to calm their minds before combat. Engineers shared impossible stories about the worlds they'd built for the collective. On the 3rd day, Commander found Maria staring at a star chart. "Thinking about the odds?" he asked. "Thinking about what said when this all started," Maria replied. "That we'd rather die on our feet than live on our knees. I used to think that was just rhetoric. Now I understand it's the only thing that matters." "You think we'll win?" "I think we'll fight, that's enough." Prime appeared on their sensors like a jewel in the darkness. It was beautiful, a world of crystalline structures and impossible architecture, surrounded by defensive platforms that could destroy a fleet the size of humanity's in minutes. The collective hadn't lied about anything except their moral authority. They really did have power beyond imagination. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, and immediately the defenses activated. Warnings flooded every frequency, ordering them to withdraw or be destroyed. Maria gave the simple order: "All ships attack formation. Disruption drones deploy on my mark. Fighters launch. Let's show them what 300 years of human stubbornness looks like." The battle that followed would be remembered as the largest space engagement in galactic history, though most people who fought in it didn't think about history. They thought about survival, about the person next to them, about doing their job in the midst of chaos. The collective's defenses were perfect, calculated to destroy any attacking force with minimal waste, but they had never faced an attack like this. Human ships didn't follow predictable patterns. They dove at platforms that shouldn't be priority targets. They sacrificed themselves not for tactical advantage, but to create openings for other ships. Warriors in armored suits launched themselves into space, physically cutting through defense station hulls with plasma torches. Disruption drones filled the battlefield with false signals, turning the collective's perfect defensive network into confusion. Ships died by the dozens. The Indomitable shook under impacts, its shields failing, its hull breaching in 3 sections. Maria held onto her command chair as the bridge filled with smoke. "Status: shields down, engines at 40%, weapons at 60%, shouted over the alarms. "But the path is opening. The boarding teams can make it through." Maria looked at the tactical display. They had lost half their fleet in 20 minutes. The other half was either crippled or would be in the next few minutes, But they had done the impossible. They had broken through to Prime. All boarding teams, this is Admiral Santos. You have your window, make it count. 12 assault ships, most of them already damaged, made the final push to the planet's surface. Maria's was one of them. If this was going to work, if they were really going to break into the heart of the collective's power, she needed to be there. The landing was less a controlled descent and more a barely managed crash. Maria's assault ship hit the surface of Prime hard enough to crack the hull, spilling soldiers and supplies across crystalline ground. Around her, warriors and human marines established a perimeter while technicians worked to locate the central systems. The architecture of Prime was wrong in ways that hurt to look at. Angles that shouldn't connect did. Distances that seemed short took forever to cross. The whole planet felt like a place that existed slightly outside normal reality. This way, a named Hin called, its telepathic senses guiding them. The central control nexus is below us, approximately 2 kilometers down. They fought their way deeper into the planet. The collective's defenders were there, automated systems and loyal species who believed absolutely in the order they served. The combat was brutal and close. Maria lost count of how many times she almost died. She saw take a plasma bolt meant for a human soldier, his carapace cracking but his spirit unbroken. She watched a named physically hold up a collapsing corridor while the others escaped. Finally, they reached it. A vast chamber that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, filled with technology that made James's virus carrier look like a stone tool. At the center, connected to systems beyond counting, stood. The Overlord looked at them with something that might have been sadness. You made it this far. I am genuinely surprised. But you cannot win, Admiral Santos. This is the heart of 1,000,000 years of accumulated power. You are insects challenging the sun. Maria was bleeding from a dozen wounds, her armor cracked, her rifle almost empty. But she met the Overlord's gaze without flinching. Maybe, but we're insects who learn to say no. James pushed forward, the virus carrier in his hands. We don't need to destroy your power. We just need to share it. Every species you've kept ignorant, every civilization you've kept dependent, they all get access to your hoarded knowledge. Your monopoly ends. Today. You will kill billions, said, and for the first time it sounded almost human, almost afraid. Without the collective's guidance, the galaxy will fall into chaos. Wars will consume entire sectors. Species will destroy themselves. The order we maintain prevents suffering on scales you cannot imagine. Or maybe they'll figure out how to live without masters, Maria said. Maybe they'll stumble and fall and make mistakes, but they'll do it as free people, not as subjects. You had 1,000,000 years to make a galaxy that didn't need you. Instead, you made one that was terrified to try. Raised its hand, and reality seemed to bend around it. Power beyond human understanding gathered, ready to erase them all. But it hesitated. Perhaps because deep down the Overlord knew they were right, or perhaps because even tyrants could feel doubt. That moment of hesitation was enough. James activated the virus. Wasn't dramatic. There was no explosion, no visible wave of energy. Just a small device connecting to systems that connected to other systems, spreading through the psychic control network that held the collective's empire together. But across the galaxy, every species suddenly had access to knowledge that had been locked away for. Scientific principles, technological specifications, historical truths about the collective's rise to power, about the civilizations they had crushed to build their empire. The control network shattered, not physically, but conceptually. 1,000,000 years of enforced obedience ended in an instant. On ships throughout the galaxy, collective officers found their crews refusing orders. On worlds long subjugated, populations rose up with new knowledge of how to break the chains holding them. Provincial governors, seeing their authority collapse, declared independence or simply fled. On Prime staggered as if struck. What have you done? You have broken eternity. You have ended order. We ended tyranny, Maria said. What comes next is up to everyone else. The Overlord collapsed, not dead but broken in ways that mattered more. Around the chamber, systems began to fail as the network that sustained them dissolved. Maria grabbed James and started running. Everyone out. This whole place is coming apart. The escape was a nightmare of collapsing architecture and failing gravity. They lost people in the chaos, brave souls who had made it to the heart of the enemy only to fall in victory. Maria's assault ship was barely functional, held together by emergency patches and desperate hope. But it flew, carrying survivors back to orbit. The view from space showed a changed galaxy. The collective's fleet around Prime had stopped fighting. Some ships were attacking each other as different factions formed instantly. Others simply hung in space, their crews arguing about what to do next. The elegant unity of the Empire had shattered into 1,000 pieces. What was left of the rebel fleet, maybe 50 ships out of 300, regrouped at the rally point. Maria stood on the bridge of the crippled Indomitable watching reports flood in from across the galaxy. Rebellions on hundreds of worlds. Collective forces fragmenting. Overlord, one of the junior members of the council, broadcasting a message calling for reform and peace. And fleeing into deep space with loyalist forces, vowing that order would be restored. The cost appeared on her screens in cold numbers. Earth had survived, but 50 colonies were gone. 30% of humanity's military had died. The fleet around her represented some of the best people she had ever known, most of whom would never make it home. Species that had joined the rebellion paid even higher prices. The third caste had been reduced to a quarter of its original strength, and by the thousands had died for a freedom most of them would never live to see. Commander appeared beside her, his uniform torn and blood-stained. Admiral, we're receiving messages from the Galactic Assembly. They want to meet, talk about what comes next. What does come next? Maria asked, not really expecting an answer. We rebuild, said simply. We mourn, we remember, and we figure out how to build something better than what we tore down. 3 months later, Maria stood in the first Free Galactic Assembly, a gathering of equals rather than a hierarchy of masters and servants. Hundreds of species, many of whom had been enemies weeks ago, trying to figure out how to coexist without the collective's iron grip. Ambassador, who had delivered humanity's first refusal, delivered humanity's first message to the free galaxy. Maria watched from the audience, proud and sad in equal measure. We didn't challenge the cosmic overlords because we thought we could win, said. We challenged them because humans have never been good at accepting chains. We've spent our entire history breaking them, on Earth and now among the stars. We didn't save the galaxy. We just reminded it how to save itself. The collective is broken but not dead. Still exists, still believes order must be restored. There will be struggles ahead. Wars, probably. Mistakes, certainly. Some of you will look back on the collective's rule and miss the stability. Some of you will build new tyrannies of your own. But you'll do it as free people. You'll choose your own paths. And maybe, just maybe, you'll build something worth the price we all paid. Because freedom isn't just the right to succeed. It's the right to fail, to learn, to grow, to become something better than you were. Looked directly at the assembled representatives, at aliens who were learning to think of themselves as equals rather than subjects. The age of cosmic tyranny is over. What comes next is up to all of us. Humanity will be here, not as your saviors or your rulers, but as your partners. We'll stumble together, and that's exactly how it should be. The assembly dissolved into arguments almost immediately, disputes about resources and territories and philosophies. It was messy and loud and chaotic, and it was the most beautiful thing Maria had ever seen, because it was free. She returned to Earth 6 months after the Battle of Prime. The planet was but alive, its people rebuilding with the same stubborn determination that had defined humanity's entire fight. She visited memorials for the fallen, read letters from families who had lost everything, and tried to find words to explain why it had been worth it. Late one night, she stood on a balcony overlooking a city that was slowly coming back to life. James found her there, carrying 2 drinks and looking almost healthy after months of recovery. "Do you think we did the right thing?" he asked quietly. Maria thought about warning, about chaos and suffering and the cost of freedom. She thought about the species who had died, the ones who would die in the conflicts to come. She thought about the messy, imperfect galaxy they had created by breaking the collective's perfect order. "I think we did the human thing," she said finally. "We saw chains and broke them, even knowing what it would cost. Maybe that was right, maybe it was wrong, but it was a choice, and that's what matters. For the first time in a million years, the galaxy gets to choose." They stood in silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, waited, patient as only the ancient could be. Somewhere, new conflicts were already beginning. Somewhere, species were learning to stand on their own or falling back into old patterns. But they were falling and standing on their own terms. And that, Maria thought, was worth every sacrifice. Every ship lost, every life ended, every impossible choice they had made. Humanity had challenged the cosmic overlords and won, not by being stronger or smarter or better, but by being human, by refusing to accept that power made right, by believing, despite every rational argument otherwise, that freedom was worth any price. The galaxy would never be the same, neither would humanity. They had paid in blood and grief to earn their place not as rulers but as equals among the stars. It was enough. It was everything.